The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. We'll be starting our webinar in 1 minute. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third webinar in the Access Student Talent webinar series. This series is designed for small businesses who are interested in learning more about working with college and university students. My name is Allison Mitchell, and I am the Experiential Learning Outreach Coordinator for the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Our presenter today is Kitty Runstedler, who is the Employer Relations Consultant at Conestoga College. Kitty will be talking with us today about the funding initiatives that are available for businesses who are interested in hiring post-secondary students. Before we start today's webinar, here are some housekeeping items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. The slides from today's presentation and a copy of the Access Student Talent one-pager are available in your control panel. Please ask questions throughout the webinar in the question box in your control panel. All questions will be answered at the end of the webinar, and all webinar registrants will receive a copy of today's recording. The agenda for today's webinar is as follows. We'll do an introduction and housekeeping, as we just did. We'll review our learning objectives, which is learning about the funding initiatives that are available. We will have our presentation from Kitty, and then we'll end off with a Q&A session at the end. Please note that there will be a feedback survey after the webinar that will launch automatically, and we would really appreciate your feedback. To give you a brief overview of what the Access Student Talent Initiative is, the Chamber is piloting this initiative in collaboration with the University of Waterloo, Wilfrid Laurier University, and Conestoga College. And this project is being funded by the Government of Ontario's Career Ready Fund. The goal of the Access Student Talent Project is to help small businesses to more easily connect with post-secondary students for co-op and non-co-op experiential learning opportunities. Through this project, we are working with small businesses and our local school partners to determine how students can best work with businesses. Our process is as follows. We will connect with a small business to understand what their needs are and their interest in working with a student. We will then gather that information and take it to the schools to understand what options the employer might have for working with a student, and we will summarize that information to provide it back to the employer. If the employer wants to proceed with working with a student, then we will provide an introduction directly between the school and the employer that would like to work with a student, and they can continue from there. In this project, we're helping small businesses who are up to 50 employees, businesses that are not tech startups. They are not already engaged with one of the 3 schools that we are working with, and we are helping both chamber and non-chamber members. When I started, I mentioned the term experiential learning, and I wanted to clarify what we mean by that term. You'll also get a better understanding of that through our presentation. According to the Ministry of Training Colleges and Universities, experiential learning supports students in getting hands-on learning that helps them transition into employment. Experiential learning is an educational activity that is facilitated and supported through a college or university. Students participate in workplaces or simulated workplaces where they are exposed to authentic demands and expectations. Students apply and expand on program knowledge and skills they have developed in their studies, and their goal is to improve their employability and interpersonal skills, which will support the students' transition to the workforce. Now I would like to introduce our presenter for today's webinar. Kitty Runstedler is the Employer Relations Consultant at Conestoga College. She has worked in cooperative education at the college since 2000. She has 12 years of prior experience training and consulting in the private sector. She has helped over 10,000 students find co-op and graduate employment. Her current portfolio of students are in IT, computer science, and electronic engineering programs. As an employer relations consultant, she connects employers with students, helps to navigate the best program fit, and promotes opportunities across multiple resources to ensure maximum exposure and build employer brand on campus. She has also served in an executive role on the board for Education at Work Ontario, and is the ITAC and Mars SWPP government relations rep for Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning Canada. Welcome, Kitty.
Thank you, Allison. And I'd like to welcome those of you joining me today and to those watching on a future date. I'm going to jump right in. And the very first thing I want to address is what is work integrated learning, and WIL is sort of the acronym that you're going to hear that term used a lot throughout my presentation today. So when we're talking about WIL, many of you will use the term co-op to sort of generically say, I want to hire a student. But when you're working with your academic partner, we bring that down more to what type of work integrated learning or WIL are you looking for. So it may be an apprenticeship, it could be an internship, field placement, and applied research projects, clinicals, practicums, co-ops. So each of those has its kind of own definition. And I'm not going to force you to learn them all. Basically, you're going to work with your academic partner to help identify that. So when you reach out to an academic institution, we will ask a series of kind of probing questions. And even through Allison at the Chamber, she's helping to navigate that with her program as well. So the most popular form then, and the generic term I mentioned we often use is co-op. But when you're reaching out to an academic institution, co-op has a very defined definition that we are looking for. So first off, it is an expectation that the employer will pay the student. It needs to be program related, and the work terms are typically 4 months in length, and then there can be multiple work terms back to back. The other form that often fits with a lot of when we see employers hiring is a term called field studies or placements. So when we're looking at a placement or a field study, they're typically a shorter period, anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. They may be part-time or full-time hours. And often these students will be available in a winter semester or in a spring semester. And just of note, in the academic field, we refer to spring semester as the summer. So it'll be a May to August work term that we're looking at. And when we're dealing with placements, often payment might be an optional thing there. So I'm going to jump right in then to why we're here. How do we find money to hire students? So the most popular one is a cooperative education tax credit. And the tax credit is available to businesses in the taxation year that the work placement ends. So when we're talking about a tax credit, it is typically, yes, the form of a credit, but any excess will be refunded. The full amount of the credit is considered to be taxable, so keep that in mind, and whoever's doing your annual tax return will be able to claim that on the Ontario tax credit form. So when we're looking at that tax credit, if your payroll in the previous taxation year was 400,000 or less, you'd be entitled to 30% of your payroll costs. If your payroll is in excess of 600,000, that drops down to 25%, and it's a sliding scale in between. The maximum you can claim is 3,000 per student per 4-month work term, and there's no application up front. So again, you're just going to claim that on your annual tax return. So when we look at what qualifies, so when we're looking at the qualifications, first off, the students must be enrolled in a program that is eligible, and not all co-op programs are eligible. So it's important that you are connecting with your academic institution to make sure that the program you're hiring from, even though the word co-op might be in the program, you want to make sure that that is an eligible co-op program. The work that the student is doing has to qualify and be related to the program of study. So again, that's something where the school will approve that job before you can assume that it's going to meet eligibility. So again, coming back to working and partnering with your academic institution. The work placement, if we're looking at an internship, it's not going to be more than 8 months. It's not less than 8 months and not more than 16 months. And we use the term internship. It can be a co-op internship, and it often fits within the co-op realm. And we need to be careful when we use the internship sort of loosely to make sure it falls into that co-op. Again, checking in with your academic institution to confirm. For tax purposes, the work term needs to be at least 10 weeks, but most institutions that you're working with are going to have their own requirements and number of hours, and typically you're looking at a minimum of 10 to 16 weeks in length for a valid co-op work term to make sure that the students get the required number of hours that the institution is looking for in their outcomes. The student must be paid and must be supervised and evaluated. So keep in mind that pretty well every co-op student you hire, there will be an evaluation process that not only ties into the student's learning performance and checks on that part, but also the government, as part of this tax credit, is looking for those performance checks as well. And the educational institution will also monitor the student's progress, and that can be through any form. It may be just through those performance evaluations or check-ins. They may ask to do a site visit. Each school works differently, and again, you would partner with the institution to what's going to work best. So who's an eligible employer? Basically all corporations or unincorporated businesses established in Ontario that are subject to file a tax return. But then when we look at the eligible educational institutions, it's any provincial institution, provincially funded Ontario University or College of Applied Arts, the Michener Institute of Applied Health Sciences, Ontario College of Art and Design, and Redeemer University College. So, supporting documentation. So how do eligible employers support their tax claims? What's going to happen is at the end of, and an important point to keep in mind is typically you're going to get documentation at the end of the work term. So sometimes we'll have employers reach out and say, I need a letter, and you're in the middle of a work term. That's not going to probably happen because we cannot qualify the work term. I'll say we, being the academic institution, cannot qualify a work term until it's completed. So at the end of a 4-month, each 4-month cycle, the academic institution will send out letters. Many of the schools are probably sending that by email, so it is important that you're receiving those emails. The documentation will have the student's name, the term the student worked for, and that letter does not have to be submitted with your tax return. You will just keep it on file in case you are audited. And typically the audit would be no different than, maybe if you had childcare receipts on file. When you submit that claim, the government 3 to 6 months, could even be a year later, might request that you send the letter into them just as confirmation. So keep that letter on hand should you be asked to submit it at a later date. So moving on then, the Student Work Placement Program, and the term I'll use is SWEP. This is a new initiative that's started by the federal government, and it's going to be over a 4-year period. The wage subsidies are up to 50% to a maximum of $5,000, or up to 70% to a maximum of $7,000 for underrepresented students, which could include first-year students, women in STEM, Indigenous students, people with disabilities, and newcomers to Canada. And the program uses a group of industry partners to distribute those funds. And currently there are 10 funding partners, and each one of them works a little bit differently, but it is important to know that the funds are all sort of coming from the same pool. So I'm going to present these, and although I have a number on top of each one, they're not in any specific order. So this is not the first one or the second one. So I'm going to start with ITAC. And ITAC calls their program the Career Ready program. So they're looking for organizations with skills in the field of information and communications technology. And their students that would be eligible here would be business technology management, computer science, computer engineering, computer systems technology. And these jobs could be business students, tech students, so any student within a STEM program. And I've given you links to go, and I recommend you go through the employer eligibility assessment to see whether you would be approved or not before going through the full application process. Once the funding for this one does require that you hire a candidate up front, so you are making a commitment to hire regardless of whether you get the funds. So it can be a little bit challenging for some employers, knowing that you maybe need to have those funds before you can make a hiring decision. And again, once you have your candidate in mind, they also need to fill out the application. And some of the tips and feedback that I'm getting from all of our SWEP partners is to make sure that you're very thorough for both the student jobs candidate side and your own employer side when you're filling that application. Make sure you don't leave anything blank, because it's probably going to have you declined. Applications for the winter are now closed, and the spring applications will be starting in January sometime, and you can check with Jan, and I've given you her contact information by email or a phone call. The next one on the list is ICTC, and their program is called the Will Digital Subsidy. And this is good for employers' advanced manufacturing, AI, cybersecurity, intelligent retail, fintech, clean tech, e-health, entertainment and gaming, connected transportation. And again, it's a very broad level. So even if you're a business supporting these technologies, you would probably still be eligible, and it's worthwhile checking in with them. So if you go to the ICTC's Will Digital Program site, again, I've included a link here. You can create an account and apply, and make sure that you do have your required, again, documentation before you start the application process so you can walk through it all. You do need to have a candidate before applying. However, with a small business, you can contact ICTC first to review your position to see whether you would be eligible before you go through that whole process of applying. And they do recommend you do that. Apply as soon as possible. They do have up to 300 new jobs just came through. And these jobs are predominantly in AI and cybersecurity. So if you're working or supporting that type of environment, definitely get your name and application in there right away. So the next one on my list is the Canadian Council for Aerospace and Aviation. And as the title says, these are organizations that are working within aerospace and aviation or supporting them. Here, if you don't have a candidate in mind, you can post your job. And as with any of these partners, you can post your jobs directly with the colleges or universities. So here again, you need to have your candidate before you apply. So you're going to make a hiring decision before you apply for this money. Your applications for the winter are now closed, so the next cycle is going to be for spring. And you need to check back on their website. Applications will probably open sometime in January. And if you have questions, Teresa Davis Woodhouse's phone number's here with her extension, or you can reach her by email. So the Electricity Human Resources Canada, their program's called Empowering Futures. And the organizations in Canada within the electrical power sector, so that could be power generation, electricity suppliers, so basically anybody within that sector. And if you go to their website, they give quite a list of who could apply. There is a link here with the terms, conditions, and eligibility. Definitely review that before applying. And then if you do fit within that eligibility, then proceed to the next link for the employer application form, which will walk you through all the steps. And again, I reinforce, make sure you have all the information ahead of time when you start the application, because you don't want to leave things blank. They're very quick at getting back, so the approval process from submission to approval takes approximately 5 to 10 business days. So this is a good one where you'll get a response fairly quickly. The employer does not need to have a candidate before applying, which is a nice option for some of our smaller companies. So now you can apply, get pre-approved funding, and you have 30 days then to find a candidate. And the links are here for additional resources. Mark Chapesky is your contact, and his email is here as well as his phone number. The next one, Environmental Careers Organization of Canada, ECHO Canada. And here their program is 50% to a maximum of 5,000. You're going to, again, complete a form for the subsidy program with the links. Again, winter applications are now closed. They will be posting for the next term, likely up there sometime in January. Should you have applied, just as an FYI, you should have got your response this week, whether you've been approved. And the contact there, if you have questions, is just by email at the bottom of the slide here. Mars is the next on the list. So Mars their program is called Studio Y Work Integrated Learning Fellowship. And this program, they can be within biotechnology or information and communication technology. And when we're looking here, it's opportunities in the field of technology and business. Students have never been employed at your organization, and you will employ the student for 12 weeks. And that pretty well probably fits with most of these funding partners. If you're interested, In hiring, you're going to contact Mars directly, and they've got a very good employer guide that you can download as a PDF document to have a look that'll walk you through what you need. Here, you do not need to have a candidate before applying. They will help you with that process, and they will actually support you in the HR role. And they are really looking predominantly for companies, small companies that are scaling up. And again, the contact there's an email link, and you can also go to their website to read more if you're interested. They do, I think all their winter spots are full, and they will be looking now for spring. The next one on the list, Mining Industry Human Resources Council. Their program is called Gearing Up. And these are organizations that are small and large, companies, organizations. You're going to actually fill out the application and submit it to Gearing Up, and you'll have to go to their website, and I've included the link below for Gearing Up for the application. And they do have information on their Gearing Up program page. In this situation as well, employers do not have to have a candidate up front, which again is good for you for applying and then getting the funding afterwards. And you can reach out to Jennifer Wright if you have questions. The next program on the list is not actually a funding where they're going to give you funds, but they're going to support the hiring process. So Toronto Finance International, TFI, has the Aspire program, and this deals with anybody basically in the financial sector. So as mentioned, they do not offer wage subsidies, but they will have a variety of resources, including training for employers, training for students, and more. And you can go to the Aspire employer page for more information and on all the different supports they have. BioTalent is next on the list. Their program is called the Student Work Placement Program. This is any organization in Canada looking to fill roles in biotechnology. The 2018 co-op placements are closed for this round of applications, so that will include the winter term. But if you watch on their website, there'll be new updates coming soon, and they anticipate that there's going to be 250 positions available for the spring. So check back with them early January, and I've included, you can contact Mary or Colleen, and their information is below. The last one on the list, I've included it just because I've told you that there are 10 partners, but this one is exclusive to employers based in Atlantic Canada. So I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but just to know this is the 10th, and it's Venture Canada, and they have an internship program. So the student eligibility for the SWPP program is generally pretty standard for most of the partners, although they will have a little bit of differences within each one. But the student must be registered in a post-secondary STEM or business program that includes a work placement, internship, or practicum. The student must be a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or person with refugee protection given under the law. They must be eligible to work in Canada. And again, you should check with each funding partner for any additional conditions. And I've given you a link to the ESDC website that you can learn more about the actual federal program. Good. So next on my list is the United Nations Association in Canada Green Spaces program. And they're going to have wage subsidies. This is, again, a federal program, wage subsidies up to 50% available for 2018 and 2019 summer. And this would apply for municipalities and other organizations to hire youth for green jobs. The wage The wage subsidy will be similar, and the government will make up to $5,700 for each youth job to be matched by the employer. So again, you're going to match that wage subsidy to whatever they give you. So it'll be dollar for dollar to a maximum. Students eligible are between the ages of 15 and 30. They're going to participate in an 8 to 16 week placement. They must be a Canadian citizen, have PR status, or refugee protection status. And again, they must be eligible to work in Canada. And there is a web link here. And our local contact for this region is Estella, and she's lovely and be very happy to help you walk through that process to see if you'd be eligible. The next on the list is Canada Summer Jobs. And Canada Summer Jobs, again, there's the eligibility criteria. Candidates must be between 15 and 30, full-time students in the previous academic year, and returning for the next academic term. Must be a Canadian citizenship, PR, or refugee status. Must have a valid social insurance number. Eligible businesses can include not-for-profit, public sector, and private businesses with fewer than 50 employees. Applications will open in January and close early February, and you are recommended to apply quickly. And more information in the application process are available on the Canada Summer Jobs Board. So next on the list is the Youth Canada Works, and this is if you want to hire a young graduate for the summer, and you may be available for this program. And they match new secondary and post-secondary grads seeking work with prospective employers, heritage organizations, Indigenous youth centers, businesses working in both official languages. And for more information on that program, I provided a link below for you. Next on the list is the apprenticeship program. And the apprenticeship program has recently changed, so it's now called GAGE. And the employers can get up to $19,200 to train an apprentice in over 130 eligible trades. And you're, as with any apprenticeship program, you're going to register your student, and there is ministry contacts you can reach out to for that registration. You will, once the student finishes, there's grants in place for different steps throughout that apprenticeship program. And the funding can again be tied into if they're in an underrepresented group, Indigenous, Francophones, people with disabilities, newcomers, or visible minorities. And again, I've provided a link for you that you can learn more about the program. Also, just to put this on your aware, there is an apprenticeship completion employer bonus. So if you do have an apprentice, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of this credit that's available to you once your apprentice completes their CFQ. And then there's also the federal apprenticeship job creation tax credit. And again, more information is available at the link. And there's also credits available to your apprentice themselves. I don't have that on there, but they should go on that site and check for themselves for tool grants and things like that. Okay, so then next is the Canada-Ontario Job Grant. And this is more for hiring grads, but I wanted to include it because it's a very good option for funding potentially eligible employees that you're looking to retrain or scale up. And the government will provide up to 83% of the cost to a maximum of $15,000 per trainee. And the contact for our region is Erica Ellis at Conestoga Career Center. And I've given you her phone number and extension along with her email, so you can reach out to Erica if you're looking to bring on a new employee that's going to need to be trained and skilled up. The next one is the Ontario Media Development Corporation, OMDC tax credit. And here it can be a credit from 18 to 40%. And again, it's the form of a tax credit. So there's no application up front. You will claim it on your annual tax return. And this is eligible for Ontario cultural entrepreneurs from the book and magazine, publishing, film, television, recording, interactive digital media, etc., who want to grow their business. And I've provided a website link here for you, along with an email that you can direct, or a phone number you can call for any questions that you might have on the program. And then the next one, Ontario Innovation Tax Credit. 8% refundable tax credit up to $300,000. This is for corporations in Ontario that carry out scientific research and experimental development. And you can claim qualified expenditures, including expenses related to hiring a co-op student. And I've just included what tax form that gets claimed under for your corporate. This would be for a corporation. And again, there's no application up front. It would be claimed on your tax submission. And again, I've included the link for more information on that one. Lots of links today. MITAC. MITACS is actually building partnerships between academia, industry, and the world to create a more innovative Canada. So these are funds. These funds predominantly require you to be doing research with an academic institution partner, and part of the funding that you're going to get through that is for hiring that student. So you would be, if you're interested in MITACS and you have a research project, you are going to have to work with an academic institution. We love working with employers. And my suggestion would be to contact Ashley, talk about your program, and she can help navigate and line you up with probably some academic partners that would maybe be able to support the program best. So your starting point would be to reach out to Ashley and have that conversation with her. And we're going quicker. So the last, I wanted to talk about sort of another resource for you, and this is kind of new to my portfolio, is Innovation Canada Digital Resource Tool. So you may be able to bypass every other slide that I've presented today and use this step-by-step survey tool. That's going to walk you through a series of questions, and it's kind of a brilliant tool, and they won awards for it. And I will be honest with you, I just found this tool yesterday. It's a very good interactive tool that will go step by step, where it's going to ask you a question. What are you looking to hire for? Or what do you need help? So this could even line you up with other funds and supports to grow your business. So please check out that tool, and kudos to Innovation Canada Digital Resource for this great tool. Just in case you are looking more on the research space, I just included a slide. A lot of research funding does tie into student hiring. So I just included a couple portal links for you if you are looking to grow your business and technology through any kind of research project. There's 2 links here that you can tie into. And before I move on to questions, I just wanted to give a shout out to the University of Waterloo for the excellent funding resources that they have on their website as well for employers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kitty, for that great presentation. You shared a lot of really great information, and there are significantly more funding options out there than one would think. And so I hope that there is a funding option out there that will help you be able to hire a student to work with your business. To those on the webinar, if you haven't already taken a few minutes to submit your questions, and if you have a question, please feel free to type it into the control box. To learn more about the initiative that we're working on here at the Chamber, please feel free to visit our webpage. You can follow us on social media, and all of the contact information will be listed on the last slide of our presentation. I wanted to give a reminder that there will be a feedback survey launching after the webinar. We would love to hear from you, so please do take a minute to fill it out and let us know how the webinar series is going so far. So if we turn it over to questions now, we have a question from somebody who said, can I use the Canada Summer Job Grant for co-op?
So thank you for that question. It's kind of a two-part yes and no answer. So typically the Canada Summer Job Grant Program will only give you funding to cover 8 weeks of employment. So if you are relying completely on that program, it's not going to be enough to meet co-op requirements, because typically, as mentioned earlier, most of the academic institutions are going to require you to have that student for 12 weeks. So you will fall short on the number of weeks that you're going to be able to pay your student if that's the only funds you're using for hiring. Certainly, if you're able to budget to pay for the additional weeks, then yes, the Canada Summer Job Grants will partially fund it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kitty. Another question that has come in, if somebody has applied for a funding opportunity and they haven't heard back, what should they do?
Be patient. That's a very good question as well. And I do get that a lot. As Allison mentioned in her introduction, I am the government CWIL government relations rep for ITAC and MARS for the colleges, and I do get a lot of phone calls or emails from my colleagues at other academic institutions, as well as some of my employers, who will say, you know, I applied and I haven't heard anything. I've applied and I haven't heard anything. And it can be very frustrating when you're waiting and waiting. And my suggestion to you, outside of being patient, is to give them a phone call and follow up with them. If you can appreciate it, the volume that they get for applications is extremely high. This is Canada-wide. So my suggestion to you would be the contacts that I've given you. If there's a phone number, follow up by phone, and just kind of keep yourself on their radar. And for lack of maybe better cliches, is be the squeaky wheel to keep yourself on the forefront. But again, and be patient. And a lot of times it's all in the timing of when you're applying. So reaching out when they're at the peak of their volumes may take longer for them to respond to you, but they definitely want to hear from you.
Okay, great. Another question, can the Canada-Ontario Job Grant be used for existing employees, for example, leadership training programs? You mentioned that it was for new employees.
I'm going to apologize. I cannot answer that question 100%. I would recommend, if you're interested in those funds, that you reach out to Erica, and she'll be able to provide you with an answer whether it fits for your existing employees.
We have one employer on the call who's been able to connect with Conestoga College with a student, and they would like to hire that student in May 2019. So the question is, what's my next step in getting her on board in an approved co-op placement?
That might even be one of my students. Definitely next steps would be we have to register. So we would need to see the job description. And typically, if you've already made arrangements and discussions with that student, the student can send the information. On our system, every one of the students have to create a work term record, and that work term record has to be approved. And I'm assuming every academic institution is approving any work term, whether they were a posted job or a student self-developed. So we would look at a role as this is the students initiated this position. So we would have to qualify it. So we need to see the job description. We want to make sure the start date, the end date, the hours per week, how much you're paying that student. And then going forward, we would tell you whether that student is approved and create that work term record and move forward.
Okay, we have another question. Is it an annual maximum of $15,000 per trainee? So I'm not sure which funding they're referring to.
I suspect that's
for the Canada Summer Job or the Canada Ontario Jobs Grant.
Job grant. I think that it's probably 15. Well, I'm looking at my slide. It's 15,000 per trainee. But I don't know enough depth of this program to know if you can have more than one trainee. I'm probably going to make an assumption that you're only going to get funding for one trainee. I know it's a very popular program, so they'd want to spread it out to maximize the number of employers reaching it. But again, I really recommend that you contact Erica, and she can answer all those questions for you.
Okay, great. That looks like all of the questions that we have at this time. Again, I would like to thank Kitty for sharing the variety of funding initiatives that are available to businesses who are interested in hiring post-secondary students. Engaging with students benefits both the business and the students, and I hope that you will all consider working with a student in your business. Again, if you're interested in talking with us further about the initiative that the Chamber is piloting in collaboration with Conestoga College, the University of Waterloo, and Wilfrid Laurier University, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is up on the screen now. You can reach me by email at amitchell@greaterkwchamber.com. You can also follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram, and you can visit our website. Thanks again to everybody who joined us for this webinar, and thanks again to Kitty for presenting.